Why did Google Hangout just said the Hangout is live? Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Emunah Yisrael. So last 101. I'm on this last curve. You got no more juice left in you, but it's still kicking. We're going to cross this finish line. Oh, wait a minute.
Type 2 diabetes doesn't care who you are or where you're from. We're just everyday people fighting high blood sugar. Farxiga may help.
I mean, YouTube be bugging out. YouTube just be bugging out. But yeah, we're going to cross this finish line together. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Emunah Yisrael. 2 more chapters in this particular book. And as you already know, this is our last book for the year. All praise be to the Most High. It's been a most enlightening year. But I guess I'll save all of that lovely, nice stuff for tomorrow, right? We're just going to hit up Olaudah. I've been missing for the last week. We would have been finished like a few days ago, but nothing ever happened before the time. I had a crazy rash, allergic reaction, contact dermatitis, and I'm going to keep it real. I was miserable. My skin was itching me, and I haven't had one of those in a long time, so I wasn't in the mood to do no talking. So I'm glad I'm feeling better now. And yeah, thank you for your concerns. Thank you for your concerns. I'm feeling better now, and we're going to finish this up today and tomorrow, most high willing. So we are reading Olaudah Equiano. What book is this here? He went through a whole soliloquy, like the miscellaneous verses. He's like, as they would say, born again Christian. This is chapter 10, right? So chapter 10, section 11. And for those who have stuck with us, I'll give y'all shouts out tomorrow. I'll shout y'all out tomorrow. Most high willing. Chapter 11. The author, okay, let's see if we can remember. Born again Christian. He's still going out on trips. Now he's like, yo, I can't hang with y'all because y'all kind of scoundrelish, blasphemous. Yeah, pretty much. So he's been going through, some questions about his eternal well-being. And so here we are. The author embarks on aboard a ship bound to Cadiz, is near being shipwrecked, goes to Malaga. I've never heard of Malaga. Remarkably fine cathedral there. The author disputes with popish priests, picks up 11 miserable men at sea and returning to England, engages again with Dr. Irvin to accompany him to Jamaica and the Mosquito Shore, meets with the Indian prince on board. The author attempts to instruct him in the truth of the gospel, frustrated by the bad example of some on the ship. The arrival in Mosquito Shore with some slaves they purchased at Jamaica and began to cultivate a plantation. Some account of the manners and customs of Mosquito Indians. Mosquito Indians? Has anybody heard of Mosquito Indians? Like, did they give the mosquito bug? Because the name looks kind of similar. I would have to look that up. Successful device of the author to quell a riot among them. Curious entertaining given by Dr. Irvin and the author, who leaves the shore and goes for Jamaica. Is barbarously treated by a man with whom he engaged for his passage. Escape, goes to Mosquito Admiral, who treats him kindly. He gets another vessel and goes on board. Instances of bad treatment, meets Dr. Irvin, gets to Jamaica, is cheated by his captain, leaves the doctor, and sails for England. Like, this is like mostly both the third, fourth, fifth time like the same chain of events happen to him over and over. He trusts, and he gets jacked up, and then he wants to go back to England, and so he seems to be like in this cyclical, continuance of what he would, I guess, think is bad luck or some level of crosses. But let's continue read. Chapter 10, section 10. What is this? Paragraph 1. When our ship was as soon as I'm about to read, somebody pops out, right? When our ship was got ready, okay, for sea again, I was entreated by the captain to go in her once more, but as I felt myself as happy as I could wish to be in this life, I for some time refused. However, give her a little bit and then bring it back. However, the advice of my friends at last prevailed, and in full resignation to the will of God, I embarked to Cadiz in March 1775. We had a very good passage without any material accident until we arrived off the Bay of Cadiz, where one Sunday, just as we were going into the harbor, the ship struck against a rock and knocked off a garboard plank, which is the next to the keel. And this is interesting. I'm gonna have to stop right here. There's some stuff I'm gonna address, most high willing, after the readings. So for those who have been going through the readings, you see the value of it. And why is it so valuable, Emunah? Because there are some people in our community, as they're going through different phases of, you know, the grief that we all collectively share in this diaspora. Many would like to say, oh, I've never seen a slave ship, and where are the slave ships? And Olaudah in this case is first primary source of a lot of the ships that he embarked upon. This is the 1700s. He's transporting slaves. This is not a European speaking about this. This is a melanated man. So for those out there who keeps talking about you never saw a slave ship, a lot of the slave ship was repurposed. Because if you look at what was happening on those ships after they had these voyages, or after the stench, if the stench could still be on the continent when people are going to the door of no return and they're going to these slave castles, if it is reported that the stench is still in those places after 200, 300, 400 years, how is it then that you're going to think that the stench wouldn't remain in a ship? And so some of these people deemed that these ships weren't sail worthy anymore, and they were destroyed or dismembered and whatever case. But again, there's more information that, you know, I think should be studied before we go around making these proclamations. I'm sorry, I saw that earlier or yesterday and it bugged me, but we'll address it in full at another time. Let's where am I? I'm sorry. So once again, he's transporting slaves. This is not the first, second, or third time he's transferring slaves from island to island, or you know, from island to coast. So let's continue. Okay, so they're having a problem here. And in an instant of hands, all hands were in the greatest confusion and began to, with loud cries, to call on God to have mercy on them. Although I could not swim, all this sailing and he couldn't swim, and saw no way of escaping death, I felt no dread in my then situation, having no desire to live, he says. I even rejoiced in spirit, thinking that his death would be sudden glory, but the fullness of time was not yet come. The people near to me, were very astonished in seeing me thus calm and resigned. But I told them of the peace of God, which was sovereign grace I enjoyed, and these words were the instant in my mind. He says, Christ is his pilot, wise, his compass and his word, his soul, each storm defies, while he has such a Lord. He trusts his faithfulness and power to save him in the trying hour. Did he just spit bars for them? Though rocks and quicksands deep through all his passage lie, yet he says Christ shall safely keep and guide him with his eye. How can I sink, he says, with such a prop that bears the world and all things up? So he spit bars for them when they were asking him, kind of like a Jonah situation. It goes on to say, at this time there were many large Spanish flukers or passage vessels full of people crossing the channel. A number of them, seeing our condition, came alongside us. As many hands as could be employed began to work, some at our 3 pumps and the rest uploading the ship as fast as possible. There being only a single rock called the Porpoise on which we struck, we soon got off it, and providentially it was then high water. We therefore run the ship ashore at the nearest place to keep her from sinking. After many tides, with a great deal of care and industry, we got her repaired again. When we had dispatched our business at Cadiz, we went to Gibraltar, and from thence to Malaga, a very pleasant and rich city where there is one of the finest cathedrals I had ever seen. It had been about 50 years in building, as I heard, though it was not yet quite finished, or not then quite finished. Great part of the inside, however, was completed and highly decorated with the richest marble columns and many superb paintings. It was lightened occasionally by an amazing number of wax tapers of the different sizes, some of which were as thick as a man's thigh. These, however, were only used on some of their grand festivals. Hold on one second. I was very much shocked at the custom of bull baiting and other diversions which prevailed here on Sunday evenings, to the great scandal of Christianity and morals. I used to express my abhorrence of it to a priest whom I met with. I had frequent contests about religion with the Reverend Father, in which he took great pains to make a proselyte of me to his church, and I no less to convert him to mine. On these occasions, I used to produce my Bible and show him in what points his church erred. When he then said he had been in England and the very person there read the Bible, which was very wrong, but I answered him that Christ desired us to search the scriptures. In his zeal for my conversion, he solicited me to go to one of the universities in Spain and declared that I should have my education free, and told me if I got myself made a priest, I might in time become even Pope. I can't. And that Pope Benedict was a black man. He goes on to say, as I was ever desirous of learning, I paused some time upon this temptation and thought by being crafty I might catch some with guile, but I began to think it would only be hypocrisy in me to embrace his offer, as I could not in conscience conform to the opinions of his church. I was therefore unable to regard the word of God, which says, come out from amongst them, and I refused Father Vincent's office, so we parted without conviction on either side. Section 2. Hold on. Section 2. Again, if you're out there and you desire to read, like I've been saying this, right? I'm gonna say it anyway. If you're out there and you desire to read, feel free to let me know. At this point, it's kind of like a joke, right? Yeah, I'll just keep reading. Having taken at this place some fine wines, fruits, and money, we proceeded to Cadiz, where we took about 10 tons more of money, etc., and then sailed for England in the month of June, when we were about the north latitude 42 degrees. We had contrary winds for several days, and the ship did not make it in the time above 6 or 7 miles straight course. This made the captain exceedingly fretful and peevish, and I was very sorry to hear God's most holy name often blasphemed by him. One day, as he was in the impious mood, a young gentleman on board, who was a passenger, reproached him, and he said he acted wrong, for we ought to be thankful to God for all things, as we were not in want of anything on board. And though the wind was contrary for us, yet it was fair for some others who perhaps stood in more need of it than we. I immediately seconded this young gentleman with some boldness, and said we had not the least cause to murmur, for the Lord was better to us than we deserved, and that he had done all things well. I expected the captain would be very angry with me for speaking, but he replied not a word. However, before that time of the following day, being the 21st of June, much of our great joy and astonishment, we saw the providential hand of our benign Creator, whose ways with his blind creatures are past finding out. The preceding night, I dreamed that I saw a boat immediately off the starboard main shrouds, and exactly at 1:30 o'clock. The following day at noon, while I was below, just as we had dined in the cabin, the man at the helm cried out, "A boat!" I'm quite sure he said it a little bit louder than "a boat," but I'm saying "a boat," which brought my dream that instant into my mind. I was the first man that jumped on deck and looked from the shrouds onward, and according to my dream, I described a little boat at some distance. But as the waves were high, it was as much as we could do sometimes to discern her. We, however, stopped the ship's way, and the boat, which was extremely small, came along with 11 miserable men, whom we took on board immediately. Why he gotta call them miserable? To all human appearance, these people must have perished in the course of an hour or less. The boat being small, it barely contained them. When we took them up, they were half drowned and had no victuals, compass, water, or any other necessary, and had only one bit of an oar to steer with, and that right before the wind, so that they were obliged to trust entirely to the mercy of the waves. As soon as we got them all on board, they bowed themselves on their knees and with hands and voices lifted up to heaven, thanked God for their deliverance. And I trust that my prayers were not wanting amongst them at the same time. This mercy of the Lord quite melted me, and I recollected his words, which I saw thus verified in Psalms 107. Oh, give thanks unto the Most High, for he is good, for his mercy endure forever. Hungry and thirsty, their souls fainted in them. They cried unto the Most High in their trouble, and he delivered them out of their distress. And he led them forth by the right way, and they must go to a city of habitation. Oh, that men would praise the Most High for his goodness and for the wonderful works to the children of men. For he satisfied the longing soul and filled the hungry soul with goodness. Such as sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, then they cried unto the Most High in their trouble, and he saved them out of their distress. They that go down to the sea in ships, that do business in great waters, these see the works of the Most High and his wonders in the deep. Whoso is wise and will observe these things, even they shall understand the loving kindness of the Most High. End quote. I didn't even open the quote, but end quote. The poor distressed captain said, the Lord is good, for seeing that I am not fit to die, he therefore gave me space of time to repent. I was very glad to hear this expression and took an opportunity when convenient of talking to him of the providence of God. They told us they were Portuguese and were in a big brig loaded with corn, which shifted that morning at 5 o'clock, owing to which the vessel sunk that instant with 2 of the crew, and how these 11 got into the boat, which was lashed on deck. Not one of them could tell. We provided them with every necessary and brought them all safe to London. I hope the LRD gave them repentance unto eternal life. Section 3. Like, he confused me for a second. First, I thought he was dreaming. He said he had a dream. I guess he jumped from the dream, and then it actually happened. Okay, section 3. He says, I was happy once more amongst my friends and brethren till November, when my oldest friend, the celebrated Dr. Irvin, bought a remarkable fine sloop, about 150 tons. I mean, if somebody was to go through counting the amount of boats that he himself rode on. Let's continue. He goes on to say, he had mind for a new adventure in cultivating a plantation at Jamaica and the Mosquito Shore. He asked me to go with him and said that he would trust me with his estate in preference to anyone. By the advice thereof of my friends, I accepted the offer, knowing that the harvest was fully ripe in those parts, and I hoped to be an instrument under God of bringing some poor sinner to the well-beloved Master J.C., he says. Before I embarked, I found with the doctor four mosquito Indians who were chiefs in their own country and were brought here by some English traders for some selfish ends. I lost my place, sorry. One of them was the Mosquito King's son, a youth of 18 years old of age, and whilst he was here, he was baptized in the name of George. They were going back at the government's expense after having been in England about a year, during which they learned to speak pretty good English. When I came to talk to them about 8 days before we sailed, I was very much mortified in finding they had not frequented any churches since they were there to be baptized, nor was any attention paid to their morals. I was very sorry for this mock Christianity and had just an opportunity to take some of them once to church before we sailed. So now he churchifying everybody. We embarked in the month of November 1775 on board of the sloop the Morning Star, Captain David Miller, and sailed for Jamaica. In our passage, I took all the pains that I could to instruct the Indian prince in the doctrines of Christianity, of which he was entirely ignorant, and to my great joy, he was quite attentive and received with gladness the truths, that the LRD enabled me to set before him, or set forth to him. I taught him in the compass of 11 days all the letters, and he could put even 2 or 3 of them together and spell them. I had Fox martyrology with cuts, and he used to be very fond of looking into it. I would ask my many questions about the papal cruelties he saw depicted there, and I explained to him I much such I made such progress with this youth, especially in religion, that when I used to go to bed at different hours of the night, if he was in his bed, he would get up on purpose to go to prayer with me, without any other clothes than his shirt. And before he would eat any of his meals amongst the gentlemen in the cabin, he would first come to me to pray, as he called it. I was well pleased at this and took great delight in him, and used much supplication to God for his conversion. I was in full hope of seeing daily every appearance of what change which I would wish, not knowing the devices of Satan, who had many of his emissaries to sow his tears as fast as I sowed the good seed, and pulled down as fast as I built up. So now I'm my convert people now. Thus we went out nearly 4/5 of our passage. When Satan at last got the upper hand, some of his messengers, seeing this poor heathen much advanced in piety, began to ask him whether I had converted him to Christianity, laughed and made their jest at him, for which I rebuked them as much as I could. But the treatment caused the prince to halt between two opinions. Some of the true sons of Belial, who I can't with them, who did not believe that there was any hereafter, told him never to fear the devil, for there was none existing. And if ever he came to the prince, they desired he might be sent to them. Thus they teased the poor innocent youth, so that he would not learn his book any more. He would not drink nor carouse with these ungodly actors, nor would he be with me even at prayers. This grieved me very much. I endeavored to persuade him as I could, but he would not come, and entreated him very much to tell me his reason for acting thus. At last he asked me, how comes it that all white men on board who can read and write, observe the sun, and know all things, yet swear and lie and get drunk only, excepting yourself? I answered him the reason was that they did not fear God, and that if any one of them died so, they could not go to or be happy with God. He replied that if a certain person went to hell, he would go to hell too. I was sorry to hear this, and as he sometimes had the toothache, and also other persons in the ship at the same time, I asked him if their toothaches made his easy. He said no. Then I told him if he and these people went to hell together, their pains would not matter. Their pains would not make his any lighter. This had great weight with him. It depressed his spirits much, and he became even after during the passage fond of being alone. Section 4. For those who have just joined us, we're reading Olaudah Equiano, chapter 10. Gustavus Vassa, the African, chapter 10, section 4. Let's see how many sections we got in this. Woo, let's see if we can make it. When we came into the latitude of Martinico and near making the land one more, we had a brisk gale of wind, and carrying too much sail, the mainmast went over the side. Many people were then all about deck, and the yards mast and rigging came tumbling all about us. Yet there was not one of us in the least hurt, although some were within a breath here of being killed. And particularly, I saw two men who, by the providential hand of God, were most miraculously preserved from being smashed to pieces. On the 5th of January, we made Antigua and Montserrat, and ran along the rest of the islands, and on the 14th we arrived at Jamaica. One Sunday while we were there, I took the Mosquito Prince George to church, where he saw the sacrament administered. When we came out, we saw all kinds of people almost from the church door, from the space of half a mile down to the water, side by side, buying and selling all kinds of commodities, and these acts afforded me great matter of exhortation to the youth, who was much astonished. Our vessel being ready to sail for Mosquito Shore, I went with the doctor on board a Guinea man to purchase some slaves. Listen up. So he goes with the doctor on board a Guinea man to purchase some slaves to carry with us and cultivate plantation. I chose them all by my own countrymen, some of whom came from Libya. On the 12th of February, we sailed for Jamaica, and on the 18th arrived at the Mosquito Shore at a place called Dupupi. I don't know why I want to call it Duppy, but Dupupi. I'm sorry. If I have that wrong, my apologies. All our Indian guests now, after I had admonished them and a few cases of liquor given them by the doctor, took an affectionate leave of us and went ashore where they were met by the Mosquito King. And we never saw, I'm gonna look this up, mosquito Indians. We never saw one of them afterwards. We then sailed to the southward of the shore to a place called Cape Gracias Adios, where there was a large lagoon or lake which received the emptying of 2 or 3 very fine large rivers and abounded much in fish and land tortoise. Some of the native Indians came on board of us here. We used them well and told them that we were come to dwell amongst them, at which they seemed pleased. So the doctor and I, with some others, went with them ashore, and they took us to the different places to view the land in order to choose a place to make a plantation. This is very interesting. In his account, they're having a conversation with the Indians. They're not enslaving the Indians, but they did go and buy slaves. And there are a lot of people. Anyway, I'm not even going to digress. I'm just keep going. That just take note. We fixed on a spot near a riverbank in rich soil, and having got our necessaries out of the sloop, we began to clear away the wood and plant different kinds of vegetables, which had a quick growth. Okay, I'm coming. It says here, while we were employed in this manner, our vessel went northward to Black River to trade. While she was there, a Spanish Guarda Costa met with and took her. This proved very hurtful and a great embarrassment to us. However, we went out with the culture of the land. We used to make fires every night all around us to keep off wild beasts, which, as soon as it was dark, set up a most hideous roaring. Our habitation being far up in the woods, we frequently saw different kinds of animals, but none of them ever hurt us except poisonous snakes, the bite of which the doctor used to cure by giving to the patient as soon as possible about half a tumbler of strong rum with a good deal of cayenne pepper in it. In this manner, he cured 2 natives and 1 of his own slaves. Section 5, Chapter 10. The Indians were exceedingly fond of the doctor, and they had good reason for it, for I believe they never had such a useful man amongst them. They came from all quarters to our dwelling, and some Woolwo or flat-headed Indians who lived 50 or 60 miles about our river and this side of the South Sea brought us a good deal of silver in exchange for our goods. The principal articles we could get for our neighboring Indians were turtle oil and shells, a little silk glass, and some provisions, but they would not work at anything for us except fishing. And a few times they assisted to cut down some trees in order to build houses, which they did exactly like the Africans. But the joint labor of men, by the joint labor of men, women, and children, he doesn't associate himself with anybody. Like he's just like an orphan, the Africans. Like he's not an African. Like they didn't, and we have that amongst our people. Those who may have grown up in a different space, they don't consider themselves whoever they are, and so it's kind of interesting to hear that conversation. But I do not recollect any of them to have had more than 2 wives. These always accompanied their husbands when they came to our dwelling. And then they generally carried whatever we brought to us and always squatted down behind their husbands. Whenever we gave them anything to eat, the men and their wives ate separate. I never saw the least sign of incontinence among them. The women were ornamented with beads and fond of painting themselves. The men also paint even to excess. Both their faces and shirts, their favorite color is red. The women generally cultivate the ground, and the men are fishers and canoe makers. Upon the whole, no, I'm reading, Tutu. Sorry, that's the baby. Upon the whole, I never met any nation that was so simple in their manner as these people, so had so little ornament in their houses. Okay, baby, put it here. Put it here for mama. Thank you. Just put it there. Where are we? Neither had they, as I ever could learn, one word expressive of an oath. The worst word I ever heard amongst them when they were quarreling was one that they had got from the English, which was, "You rascal." I never saw any mode of worship among them, but in this they were not worse than their European brethren or neighbors. For I am sorry to say that there was not one white person in our dwelling, nor anywhere else that I saw in different places I was at on shore, that was better or more pious than those unenlightened Indians. Oh, chill. A lot who went there. He says, but they neither worked or slept in on Sundays. And to my sorrow, working was too much Sunday employment with others. So much so that in some length of time, we really did not know one day from another. This mode of living laid the foundation of my decamping at last. The natives are well made and warlike, and they particularly boast of having never been conquered by the Spaniards. They were great drinkers of strong liquor when they can get them. We used to distill rum from pineapples, which were plenty here, and then we could not get them anyway from our place. Yet they seemed to be singular in the point of honesty above any other nation I was ever amongst. The country being hot, we lived under an open shed where we had all kinds of goods without a door or lock to any one article. Yet we slept in safety and never lost anything or were disturbed. This surprised us a good deal, and the doctor, myself, and others used to say, if we were to lie in that manner in Europe, we should have they should have their throats cut the first night. So he's recounting, welcome to those who just joined us. He's recounting his experience. Right now he's on the island of Jamaica. He's saying Mosquito Indians. I have to look them up. I haven't heard about them before. But he's comparing them to the European. And by the way, he went there with this Captain Irving to start a plantation. So in his narrative, the Indian gave them land, and now they're having these friendly relations with them. The Indian governor goes once in a certain time all about the province or district, and has a number of men with him as attendants and assistants. He settles all the differences among the people. So they got a judge. They got a judge who goes out, right? Very interesting. He settles all the differences among the people like the judge here, and is treated with a very great respect. He took care to give us timely notice before he came to our habitation by sending his stick as a token for rum, sugar, and gunpowder, which he did not refuse sending. And at the same time, we had the utmost preparations to receive his honor and his train. When he came with his tribe and all neighboring chieftains, we expected to find him a grave, reverend judge, solid and sagacious. But instead of that, before he and his gang came in sight, we heard them very clamorous, and they even had plundered some of our good neighboring Indians, having intoxicated themselves with our liquor. Listen to this. So you guys come in and drunk them up, get them liquor, and then say how wild they're acting. When they arrived, we did not know what to make of our new guests, and would gladly have dispensed with the honor of their company. However, having no alternative, we feasted them plentiful all the day till the evening, when the governor, getting quite drunk, grew very unruly and struck one of our most friendly chiefs, who was our nearest neighbor, and also took his gold lace hat from him. At this, great commotion took place, and the doctor interfered to make peace, as we could all understand one another, but to no purpose. And at last they became so outrageous that the doctor, fearing he might get in trouble, left the house and made the best of his way to the nearest wood, leaving me to do as well as I could among them. Wow. So the doctor bails on him with the unruly, drunken judge Indian man. I was so enraged with the governor that I could have wished to have seen him tied fast to a tree and flogged for his behavior. Oh, so now he's taking on the slave master's behavior, and now he wants to whip people. But I had not people enough to cope with this party. I therefore thought of a stratagem to appease the riot. Recollecting a passage I had read in the life of Columbus when he was among the Indians in Mexico or Peru, where on some occasion he frightened them by telling them of certain events in the heavens, I had recourse to the same expedient, and it succeeded beyond my most sanguine. Okay, I might be saying that wrong. SANGU. Y'all know me. Give me a minute. 1 second. This is an interesting word here. SANGUINE.
Sanguine.
All right. There you go. Sanguine rhymes with penguin, right? One of his most sanguine expectations mean optimistic or positive, especially in apparently bad or difficult situation. Sanguine.
Sanguine.
Cool. So he says, so it's a bad situation. And he said, and it exceeded beyond my most sanguine expectations. New word. When I had formed my determination, I went in the midst of them, and taking hold of the governor, I pointed up to the heavens. I menaced him and the rest. I told them that God lived there, and that he was angry with them, and they must not quarrel so, and that they were all brothers, and if they did not leave off and go away quietly, I would take the book, pointed to the Bible, and read and tell God to make them dead. I can't with him. This operated on them like magic. The clamor immediately ceased, and I gave them some rum and a few other things to further make them drunk, after which they went away peaceably. And the governor afterwards gave our neighbor, who called Captain Plasmia, his hat again. When the doctor returned, he was exceedingly glad at my success in thus getting rid of our troublesome guests. Section 6, chapter 10. The Mosquito people within our vicinity, out of the respect to the doctor, myself, and his people, made entertainment of the grand kind, called in their tongue tori, or drykabat. Drikabat? The English of this expression is a feast of drinking, of which it seems a corruption of language. The drink consisted of pineapples roasted and cassads chewing or bitten into mortar, which after lying some time ferments and becomes so strong as to intoxicate when drank in quantity, in any quantity. We had timely notice given to us of the entertainment. A white family within 5 miles of us told us how the drink was made. I and 2 others went before the time to the village where the mirth was appointed to be held, and there were, please don't do that. Go ahead. No. Okay, I soon come. Where are we? And there we saw the whole art of making the drink, and also the kind of animal that were to be eaten there. I cannot say the sight of either the drink or the meat was enticing to me. They had some thousands of pineapples roasting when they squeezed dirt and all into a canoe and had there for the purpose. The cassad drink was in beef barrels and other vessels and looked exactly like hogwash. Men and women and children were thus employed in roasting the pineapples and squeezing them with their hands. For food, they had many land torpeens or tortoises, some dried turtle, and 3 large alligators alive and tied fast to the trees. I asked the people what they were going to do with these alligators, and I was told they would be eaten. I was much surprised at this and went home not a little disgusted at the preparations. When the day of the feast was come, we took some rum with us and went to the appointed place, where we found a great assemblage of those people, who received us very kindly. The mirth had begun before we came, and they were dancing with music, and the musical instruments were nearly the same as those of any other Sable people, but as I thought, much less melodious than those of any other nation I ever knew. They had many curious gestures in dancing, and a variety of motions and postures of their body, which to me were in no wise attracting. The males danced by themselves, and the females also by themselves, as was with us. The doctor showed his people the example by immediately joining the woman party, though not by their choice. On perceiving the women disgusted, he joined the males. So he goes over there to dance with the women, and they're like, "What are you doing?" So now he goes to dance over there with the men. Oh, that's funny. At night there were great. At night there were great illuminations by setting fire by to many pine trees with the dry jicabot went round merrily by calabashes or gourds, but the liquor might more justly be called eating than drinking. One Odin, the oldest father in the vicinity, was dressed in a strange and terrifying form. Around his body was skins adorned with different kinds of feathers, and he had on his head a very large and high headpiece in the form of grandeur cap, with the prickles like a porcupine. And he made a certain noise which resembled the cry of an alligator. Our people skipped amongst them. Our people skipped amongst them out of the complacence, though some could not drink of their Tory, but our rum met with customers enough and was soon gone. The alligators were killed, that's disgusting, and some of them roasted. Their manner of roasting is by digging a hole in the earth, filling it with wood, which they burned to coal, and they lay sticks across on which they lay the meat. It's kind of like what they do in, what do they call that? In Hawaii. When they dig the pit, you guys know what I'm talking about. I can't remember right now. My mind is bugging. I had a raw piece of alligator in my hand. It was very rich. Ew, that's nasty. I thought it looked like fresh salmon, and it had most fragrant smell, but I could not eat any of it. This merrymaking at last ended with the least discord in any person in the company, although it was made up of different nations and complexions. Now we're on section 7. Section 7. How are you doing today? For those who just joined us, for those who will join us, this is Emunah Israel. This is the second to last. So this is second to last. Tomorrow, most I will be the last installment of the LEV project for the year of 2016. So definitely, thank you for tuning in. Let's continue. Section 7. The rainy season came on here about the latter end of May and continued till August, very heavy, so that the rivers overflowed and our provisions then in the ground were washed away. I thought this was in some measure a judgment upon us for working on Sundays, and it hurt my mind very much. I often wished to leave this place and sail for Europe, for our mode of procedure and living in this heathenish form was very irksome to me. Wasn't he heathenish in Europe? He heathenish in the islands? Like, I don't understand him right now. The word of God said, what does it avail a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? This was much and heavily impressed on my mind, and though I did not know how to speak to the doctor for my discharge, it was disagreeable for me to stay any longer. But about the middle of June, I took courage enough to ask for it. He was very unwilling at first to grant me my request, but I gave him so many reasons for it, and at last he consented to my going and gave me the following certificate of my good behavior. The bearer, Gustavus Vassa, has served me several years with strict honesty, sobriety, and fidelity. I can therefore, with justice, recommend him for these qualifications, and indeed, every respect, I consider him an excellent servant. I do hereby certify that he always behaved well and he is perfectly trustworthy. Charles Irving, Mosquito Shore, June 15th, 1776. Though I was much attached to the doctor, I was happy when he consented. I got everything ready for my departure and hired some Indians with a large canoe to carry me off. All my poor countrymen, the slaves, when they heard of my leaving them, were very sorry, as I had always treated them with care and affection and did everything I could to comfort the poor creatures and rendered their condition easy. Having taken leave of my old friends and companions on the 18th of June, accompanied by the doctor, I left that spot of the world and went southward about 20 miles along the river. There I found a sloop, the captain of which told me he was going to Jamaica. All this time I thought he was in Jamaica. Well, now he says, where's Mosquito Shore? Now, give me a second, everybody. It probably doesn't exist anymore, but Mosquito Shore. He says he was amongst some Indians. Mosquito Indians. There is such a thing as Mosquito Indians. Look at that. Indian people inhabiting the Caribbean coast of Northeast. Let me see something here. And then they pull up. 1 second. La Mosquito. La Mesquita. Oh, South America. He's in South America at this time. I don't know why. I thought he was like, it's close to Honduras. Also, okay. Mosquito Shore. All right. Okay, let me continue. Where are we? Oh, and they heard of my leaving them, were very sad, as I had always treated them with care and affection. Okay, I read that. Blinky, blanky, blink. He heard they were going to Jamaica, having agreed for my passage with him and one of the owners who was also on board, named Hughes. The doctor and I parted, and not without shedding tears on both sides. The vessel then sailed along the river till night, when she stopped in a lagoon within the same river. During the night, a schooner belonging to the same owners came in, and as she was in want of hands, Hughes, he better not get sold back into slavery. I'll be so tight if he gets sold back into slavery. Let me continue. Hughes, the owner of the sloop, asked me to go in the schooner as a sailor and said he would give me wages. I thanked him, but I said I wanted to go to Jamaica. He then immediately changed his tone. Here it is. How do I know? Something is going to get dirty. It always does with him. He then immediately changed his tone and swore and abused me very much and asked how I came to be freed. I just knew it. I told him and said that I came into the vicinity with Dr. Irvin, whom he had seen that day. This account was of no use. He still swore exceedingly at me and cursed the master for a fool that sold me my freedom, and the doctor for another in letting me go from him. Then he desired me to go in a schooner, or else I should not go out of the schooner as a free man. I just knew it. I just knew. His stories always go left field. I said this was very hard and begged. I said this was very hard and begged to be put on shore again, but he swore that I should not. I said that I had been twice among the Turks, yet had never seen such usage with them, and much less could I have expected any such of this thing among a Christian. This incensed him exceedingly, and with a volley of oaths and imprecations, he replied, Christians? Damn you, you are one of St. Paul's men, but by God, except you have St. Paul or St. Peter's faith and walk upon the water to shore, you shall not go out of the vessel, which I now learned was going amongst the Spaniards towards Carthagena, where he swore he would sell me. I just had a feeling. I simply asked him what right he had to sell me, but without another word, he made some of his people tie ropes around each of my ankles and also to each wrist, and another rope around my body, and hoisted me up without letting my feet touch or rest upon anything. Thus I hung without any crime committed and without a judge or jury, merely because I was a free man and could not by the law get any redress from a white person in these parts of the world. I was in great pain for my situation and cried and begged very hard for some mercy, but all in vain. My tyrant in a rage brought a musket out of the cabin and loaded it before me and the crew, and swore that he would shoot me if I cried any more. I had now no alternative. I therefore remained silent. Seeing not one white man on board who said a word in my behalf, I hung in that manner for between 10 and 11 o'clock at night till about 1 in the morning. When finding my cruel abuser fast asleep, I begged some of his slaves to slacken the rope that was around my body, that my feet might rest on something. This they did at the risk of being cruelly used by their master, who beat some of them severely at first for not tying me when he commanded them. Ah, boy. He is good for a curveball, isn't he? Okay, baby. Section 8. Whilst I remained in this condition till between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning, I prayed to God to forgive this blasphemer who cared not what he did, but when he got up out of his sleep in the morning, was on the very same temper and disposition as when he left me at night. When they got up the anchor and the vessel was getting underway, I once more cried and begged to be released, and now being fortunately in the way of their hoisting the sails, they released me. When I was let down, I spoke to one Mr. Cox, a carpenter, who I knew on the impropriety of this conduct. He also knew the doctor and the good opinion he ever had of me. This man went to the captain and told him not to carry me away in that manner, and that I was the doctor's steward, who regarded me very highly, and would resent this usage when he should come to know it. On which he desired a young man to put me ashore in a small canoe I brought with me. This song gladdened my heart, and I got hastily into the canoe and set off while my tyrant was down in the cabin. But he soon spied me out, and when I was not above 30 or 40 yards from the vessel and running upon the deck with a loaded musket in his hand, he presented it at me and swore heavily and dreadfully that he would shoot me that instant if I did not come back on board. As I knew the wretch would have done as he said without hesitation, I put back to the vessel again. But as the good Lord would have it, just as I was alongside, he was abusing the captain for letting me go from the vessel, which the captain returned, and both of them soon got into a very great heat. The young man that was with me now got out of the canoe. The vessel was sailing on fast with a smooth sea, and I then thought it was neck or nothing. So at that instant, I set off again for my life in the canoe towards the shore, and fortunately the confusion was so great amongst them on board that I got out of reach of the musket shot unnoticed, while the vessel sailed on with a fair wind a different way, so that they could not overtake me without tacking. But even before they could be done, I should have been on shore, which I soon reached, with many thanks to God for this unexpected delivery. He goes on to say, I then went and told the other owner who lived near the shore, with whom I had agreed for my passage, of the usage I had met with. He was very much astonished and appeared very sorry for me. After treating me with kindness, he gave me some refreshment and 3 heads of roasted Indian corn for a voyage of about 18 miles south to look for another vessel. He then directed me to an Indian chief of a district who was also a mosquito admiral, and had once been at our dwelling, after which I set off with the canoe across a large lagoon alone, for I could not get anyone to assist me, though I was much jaded and had pains in my bowels by means of rung I hung by the night before. I was therefore at different times unable to manage the canoe, for the paddling was very laborious. However, a little before dark I got to my destined place, where some of the Indians knew me and received me kindly. I asked for Admiral, and they conducted me to his dwelling. He was glad to see me and refreshed me with such things as the place afforded, and I had a hammock to sleep in. They acted towards me more like Christians than those whites I was among the last night, though they had been baptized. I told the admiral I wanted to go to the next port to get a vessel to carry me to Jamaica, and requested him to send the canoe back, which I then had, for which I was to pay him. He agreed with me and sent 5 able Indians with a large canoe to carry my things to my intended place, about 50 miles, and we set off the next morning. When we got out of the lagoon and went along shore, the sea was so high that the canoe was oftentimes very near being filled with water. We were obliged to go ashore and drag her across different necks of land. We were also 2 nights in the swamp, which swarmed with mosquito flies, and they proved troublesome to us. These tiresome journey of the land water ended, however, on the 3rd day, to my great joy, and I got on board a sloop commanded by Captain Jennings. She was then partly loaded, and he told me he was expecting daily to sail for Jamaica. And having agreed with me to work my passage, I went to work accordingly. Don't do that. I was not many days on board before we sailed, but to my sorrow and disappointment, though used to such tricks, we went to the southward along the mosquito shore instead of sailing for Jamaica. I was compelled to assist in cutting a great deal of mahogany wood on the shore as we coasted along, and load the vessel with it before she sailed. This fretted me much, but as I did not know how to help myself among these deceivers, I thought patience was the only remedy I had left. Even that was forced. There was much hard work and little victuals on board, except by good luck, he says, we happened to catch turtles, unclean turtles. On this coast, there was also a particular kind of fish called manatee, which is most excellent eating. The flesh is more like beef than fish. That's because it's kind of like a sea cow. I think that's actually what they call it, a sea cow. Another fish that Anywho, the scales was as large as shilling, and the skin thicker than I ever saw of any other fish. Okay, it had scales. Within the brackish waters along the shore, there were likewise vast number of alligators, which made the fish scarce. I was on board this sloop 16 days, during which in our coasting we came to another place where there was a smaller sloop called the Indian Queen, commanded by one John Baker. He was also an Englishman and had been a long time along the shore trading for turtle shells and silver, and had a good quantity of each on board. He wanted some hands very much, and understanding I was a free man and wanted to go to Jamaica, he told me if he could get one or two that he would sell immediately for that island. He also pretended to show me some mark of attention and respect, and promised to give me 45 shillings sterling a month if I would go with him. I thought this was much better than cutting wood for nothing. I therefore told the other captain that I wanted to go to Jamaica in the other vessel, but he would not listen to me, and seeing me resolved to go in a day or two, he got the vessel under sail and tailored to carry me away against my will. This treatment mortified me exceedingly. I immediately, according to any agreement I had made with the captain of the Indian Queen, called for her boat, which was lying near us, and it came alongside, and by means of North Pole shipmate, whom I met with the sloop I was in, I got my things into the boat and went on board of the Indian Queen July the 10th. A few days after I was there, we got all things ready and sailed, but again, to my great mortification, the vessel still went to the south, nearly as far as Carthagena, trading along the coast instead of going to Jamaica. Why he want to go to Jamaica? He ain't even saying why all of a sudden he wants to go to Jamaica. Usually when he's in these islands, he wants to leave, and now he so badly wants to go to Jamaica. As the captain had promised me, and what was worst of all, he was a very cruel and bloody-minded man, and was a horrid blasphemer. Among others, he had a white pilot, one Stoker, whom he beat often as severely as he did some Negroes he had on board. One night in particular, after he had beaten this man more cruelly, he put him into the boat and made two Negroes row him to a desolate key or small island. And he loaded two pistols and swore ability that he would shoot the Negro if they brought Stoker on board again. So he abandoned the man. There was not the least doubt but that he could do as he said, and the two poor fellows were obliged to obey the cruel mandate. But when the captain was asleep, the two Negroes took a blanket and carried it to the unfortunate Stoker, which I believe was the means of saving his life from the annoyance of insects. A great deal of entreaty was used with the captain the next day before he could consent to let Stoker come on board, and when the poor man was brought on board, he was very ill for his situation during the night, and he remained so till he was drowned a little time after. And the last section of section 10, and then after that we just have one more chapter to go, which we'll be reading most I willing tomorrow. Section 9, sorry. As we sailed southward, we came to many uninhabited islands overgrown with fine large coconut trees. As I was very much in want of provisions, I brought a boatload of the nuts on board, which lasted me and others for several weeks, and afforded us many delicious repasts in our scarcity. One day before this, I could not help observing the providential hand of God, that ever supplies all our wants, though in the ways and manner we know not. I had been a whole day without food, and made signals for boats to come off, but in vain. I therefore earnestly prayed to God for relief in my need, and at the close of the evening I went off the deck. Just as I had lain down, I heard a noise on the deck, and not knowing what it meant, I went directly to the deck again. And when we should, I see but a fine large fish, about 7 or 8 pounds, which had jumped on board. I took it, admired with thanks the good hand of God, and what I considered as not less extraordinary, the captain, who was very avaricious, did not attempt to take it from me, there being only he and I on board, for the rest were all gone ashore trading. Sometimes the people did not come off for some days. This used to fret the captain, and then he would vent his fury on me by beating me or making me feel in other cruel ways. One day, especially in his wild, wicked, and mad career, After striking me several times with different things, and once across my mouth, even with a red burning stick out of the fire, he got a barrel of gunpowder on the deck and swore that he would blow up the vessel. Say, talk about issues. I was then at my wits' end and earnestly prayed to God to direct me. The head was out of the barrel, and the captain took a lighted stick out of the fire to blow himself and me up, because there was a vessel then in sight coming in, which he supposed was a Spaniard, and he was afraid of falling into their hands. Seeing this, I got an axe unnoticed by him and placed myself between him and the powder, and having resolved in myself, as soon as he attempted to put the fire in the barrel, to chop him down at that instant. I was more than an hour in this situation, during which he struck me often, still keeping the fire in his hand for this wicked purpose. I really should have thought myself justifiable in any other part of the world if I had killed him, and prayed to God, who gave me a mind that rested solely on himself. I prayed for resignation that that his will might be done, and the following two portions of his holy word, which occurred to my mind, buoyed up my hope, and kept me from taking the life of this wicked man. He that determined at the times before appointed and set a bounds to our habitation. He's quoting Acts. And who is this, or who is there among you that fear the Most High and obey the voice of his servant, that walk in darkness and have no light? Let him trust in the name of the Most High and stay upon his power. Isaiah, first chapter 10. And this, by the grace of God, I was unable to do. I found him a present in help in the time of need, and the captain's fury began to subside as the night approached. But I found that he who cannot stem his anger's tide doeth a wild horse without a bridle ride. He's rhyming again. Okay, we're finishing up here. The next morning, we discovered that the vessel which had caused such a fury in the captain was an English sloop. They soon came to an anchor where we were, and to my no small surprise, I learned that Dr. Irvin was on board her on his way from Mosquito Shore to Jamaica. Get up. Come here, baby. I was for going immediately to see this old master and friend, but the captain would not suffer me to leave the vessel. I then informed the doctor by letter how I was treated, and begged that he would take me out of the sloop. But he informed me that it was not in his power, as he was a passenger himself, but he sent me some rum and sugar for my own use. I now learned that after I had left the estate which I had managed for this gentleman on the Mosquito Shore, during which the slaves were well fed and uncomfortable, a white overseer had supplied my place. This man, though through inhumanity and ill-judged avarice, beat and cut the poor slaves most unmercifully, and the consequence was that everyone got in a large pergua canoe and endeavored to escape, all drowned, in consequence of which the doctor's plantation was left uncultivated, and he was not returning to Jamaica to purchase more slaves and stock it again. He was now, sorry. On the 14th of October, the Indian Queen arrived at Kingston in Jamaica. When we were unloaded, I demanded my wages, which amount to £8, 5 shillings sterling. But Captain Baker refused to give me one farthing, although it was the hardest earned money I had worked for in my life. Because he was usually, a house, what would someone say, a house negro. So he didn't really have sorry. Okay, I found out Dr. Irvin on this and acquainted him with Captain Knevery. He did all he could to help me to get my money, and we went to every magistrate in Kingston, and there were 9, but they all refused to do anything for me and said my oath could not be admitted against a white man. Nor was this all, for Baker's threatened that he would beat me severely if he catch me for attempting to demand my money. And this he would have done, but I got by means of Dr. Irvin under the protection of Captain Douglas of the Squirrel Man of War. I thought this exceedingly hard usage, though indeed I found it to be too much the practice there to pay free Negro men for their labor in this manner. One day, I went with a free Negro tailor named Joe Diamond to one Mr. Cochran, who was indebted to him with some trifling sum, and the man, not being able to get his money, began to murmur. The other immediately took a horsewhip to pay him with it, but by the help of a good pair of heels, the tailor got off. Such oppression as they made me seek for a vessel to get out of the island as fast as I could, and by the mercy of God, I found a ship in November bound for England. When I embarked with convoy after having taken a last farewell of Dr. Irvin, when I left Jamaica, he was employed in refining sugars and offered me a place, but I refused. And some months after my arrival in England, I learned with much sorrow that this, my amiable friend, was dead, owing to his having eaten some poisoned fish. He had many heavy gales of wind in our passage, or we had, sorry, in the course of which no material accident occurred except that an American privateer falling in with the fleet was captured and set fire to by His Majesty's ship, the Squirrel. On January the 7th, 1777, we arrived at Plymouth. I was happy once more to tread upon English ground, and after passing some little time at Plymouth and Exeter among some pious friends whom I was happy to see, I went to London with a heart replete with thanks to God for past mercies. All right, so that's the end of chapter, what's that, 11? And we have one more chapter tomorrow, most I willing, and then we shall be done. Done. Olaudah Equiano finished the LEV project. As it relates to this chapter, this portion, I'm definitely going to take a break after this. It has been a long, very informative year. So I want to thank everybody. Hey, what's up, Person Kid? How you doing? Make sure to welcome, and hopefully you'll join us tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be the last reading of this entire year's LEV project. So, I definitely go on to doing other things, but I just want to put this work in, just call it my community service. I wanted to put this work in. I definitely know people are going to be coming this coming February looking, as we usually do as a people, for just, a one portion of the year to look at this. So I want to thank you for sticking with us too. Person Kid is another one who has been sticking with us from the beginning. And so, yeah, if you can, feel free to join us tomorrow as we finish up Olaudah Equiano. Like I said, I wanted to say, and it's going to be something, that we look into. There's a lot of rhetoric, a lot of talk about not that many slaves came over, and there's some talk that we were already here, and how come you never heard of a slave ship or saw a slave ship? And like I said before, Olaudah is firsthand account. He's a firsthand primary source speaking about how many voyages he's taken transporting goods and people. Yeah, and he's just one source, but he is one that people, take not for granted. So this is going to be very interesting as we continue with this conversation. But like I said, once again, thank everybody for tuning in, and we shall tune in tomorrow and go ahead and finish up this narrative. Yay! All right, Person Kid and all who've joined in, I pray you have a blessed night. 1